So thinking more to walking as a method of research and pedagogy. Thrift writes, quote, walking as an art practice as is a way of reminding the self that perceptions are made before conscious awareness of a particular sense, and may also mobilize new structures of thought out of which can arise new ideas. In particular, by means of walking, we can consider the sustenance provided by perception's access to the world, the social world of relational aliveness. And this thought of relational aliveness is also so necessary in how we interpret and how we document the event. So in terms of thinking through photography, videography, and writing processes, these methods should render visible this livedness, this feltness of the encounter, the movement of it, what it does, and what's being produced, the perception before a fully formed idea is proposed. So that emerging sense of a felt value of what it's like to be there. So what are we looking for as we walk? We're trying to engage in a condition to be open to perceptions that are made before conscious or concrete thought or a fully formed idea. Where Deleuze writes that something in the world forces us to think. We're pulled a little bit closer to the world. So we're gathering photos, videos, notes of our processes, which highlight particular areas of intensity, or as Maggie McClure writes, moments that glow. And I think that processes is a really important word to hold on to here, because we're not trying to photograph in ways that show a complete idea or a fully formed thought necessarily, but as we're engaging in our walking processes, we're trying to use photography and our methods in ways which highlight the livedness, the processual nature of things as unfinished, as continually emerging. So in this sense, we are attending to walking as a continual event of perception that helps us, as Triggs writes this week in that article, helps us to augment our living and its practice, reworking the mundaneness of things and how we engage with it. So in your walking, you'll be lingering, slowing down, thickening moments of attention to your relations with place, considering how dwelling with places and sensations, the haptic, the bodied experience of it, puts into motion particular ways of knowing the world. You're attending to the particular specificities of a place or a phenomenon where meaning is not extracted or pulled out, but rather composed with. Considering that our methods produce realities, we're thinking with pedagogical documentation, our photos, videos, and writings, as traces of the lived events that we can revisit later. So taking seriously that our methods create rather than reflect meaning. So this week you're going to be thinking with walking as a method of creating knowledge, as a method of inquiry, and thinking about what realities does walking create? What does walking as an artistic process invite? How does it orient you, and how does it orient your perception of an experience? What kind of meaning is created as you think through your body, through the haptic, through the sensual, and through this experience of walking in a very particular place. And I'm just going to borrow from Linda Hogan, who is a Chickasaw poet and author and also a professor, who I think writes really beautifully of place and walking. Her work really provokes me to think of walking temporalities as other than, as possible, as sort of dissolving those boundaries between the past, present, and future, and of multiple languages that exist beyond vision. So I'm going to read a short passage from her book called Dwellings, A Spiritual History of the Living World, as a provocation to think with before moving on to part 1 of your portfolio entry 8 for this week. So I'm going to quote her. She says, quote, John Hay, in The Immortal Wilderness, has written, "There are occasions when you hear the mysterious language of the earth, in water or coming through the trees, emanating through the mosses, seeping through the undercuts of soil, but you have to be willing to wait and receive. Sometimes I hear it talking. The light of the sunflower was one language, but there are others more audible. Once in the redwood forest I heard a beat, something like a drum or a heart coming from the ground and trees and wind. That underground current stirred a kind of knowing inside of me, a kinship, a longing, a dream barely remembered, that disappeared back to the body. Tonight I walk. I am watching the sky. I think of the people who came before me and how they knew the placement of the stars in the sky, watching the moving sun long and hard enough to witness how a single angle of light touched a stone only once a year. Without written records, they knew the gods of every night, the small, fine details of the world around them, and the immensity above them. Walking, I can hear the redwoods beating. It's a world of elemental attention, of all things working together, listening to what speaks in the blood. Whichever road I follow, I walk in the land of many gods, and they love and eat one another. Walking, I'm listening to a deeper way. Suddenly, all my ancestors are behind me. Be still, they say. Watch and listen. You are the result of a love of thousands. And this is one example of poetic writing that I think really attends to the nuances and the depths that are alive in a place. And another example is by Erica Violet Lee that was posted last week in Defense of Wastelands, a survival guide. And she really speaks to the tensions of place where she lives in Saskatoon. So thinking with all of this, your Portfolio 8 consists of two parts. Part 1 is thinking specifically about walking with place. So you're going to find a place and walk there. Attend to the act of walking in this particular place. Try to capture some of the experience of walking, the bodied perception and sensing in movement that Triggs, Irwin, and Lego describe in their article. So think about two of their phrases: walking that listens to light and walking that listens to all of our relations. So in this portfolio entry, you're going to use your camera to explore and record some of your interpretive engagements with these ideas. As in previous portfolio entries, this means that you're going to try to engage with the ideas and suggestions from the course as you take photos. So in this way, the processes of creating photos and the resulting photographs will be expressions of figuring something out. Again, it'll be that in-process work, not a finally finished thought or a representation of something that you already know. So with this, you'll create a series of 5 to 7 of your most expressive photos and write one short descriptive paragraph to accompany them. And your paragraph should resonate with some of the ideas from this Triggs, Irwin, and Lego article this week.